I actually find modern civilization very unnatural. Very unnatural. Hey everyone, it's Jason here, and I thought I would try explaining one of the reasons why I like wildlife photography so much. For me, it's a way of expressing, the way the world should be. So taking a picture of a bird, flower, animal, I think those are the things we should be focusing on. The inhabitants, the biological entities with whom we share the planet. I actually find modern civilization very unnatural. Very unnatural. I'll give you two examples. The first example is school. School's on my mind a lot because I did go to school for a very long time. And I studied math. And I think, for the most part, I would say I enjoyed studying mathematics because I find mathematics a very fascinating subject. But I do think also that the number of years that people typically go to school is very unnatural. I mean, I'm feeling this more and more as I get older. When I was young, I didn't sense this at all because, when you're young, your brain is working so quickly and you just want to absorb so much information and there's so many things to learn about out there. And you kind of just want to go out and absorb all that information. And university in particular provides a very structured environment in which you can absorb all of that information. But I do think as I get older, I do feel that going to school for so long, while not being a waste of time, feels like a very unnatural thing in an absolute sense. In modern civilization, this is what I'm talking about. In modern civilization, it makes sense because then with that education, you can get a good job, provide for yourself, because that's just the way things are done. But I think spending so much of one's youth inside studying arcane subjects to very hyper-specialized levels doesn't make sense from a spiritual point of view. It doesn't really satiate the soul. To some point, when you start out, your natural curiosity, of course, will lead you to investigate certain subjects. That's normal. And so going to school feels natural at first, especially if you're interested in a specific thing. A lot of people aren't, but if you are interested in a specific thing like physics, astronomy, mathematics, then school does feel like a way to explore your curiosity. But I do also think that at some point, even in school, that initial motivation kind of vanished, at least for me, because after some time, the level of specialization got to a point where it was no longer about curiosity and again, more about production. I talked a little bit about this in an article I wrote about the 3 levels of human activity, where the first is just an initial question or curiosity. The second is sort of a more serious exploration of that curiosity. But then the third stage is a production-oriented stage rather than curiosity anymore. And I think that transition from curiosity-driven exploration into production is a gradual one, and it's not easy to recognize. But I recognize it now and I feel it now very strongly. So I think that's very unnatural how pretty much everybody is expected to go to school for so many years. After 12 or 13 years of grade school, you have to go on after that and do another degree, which is 3 or 4 years. And then after that, often people still get master's degrees, which takes 1 or 2 years. And then some people like myself even get a PhD, which takes even more time, right? So how long is that after grade school, after those 12 years of grade school? So it's 4 years for undergraduate, 7 years for graduate, so another 11 years. So it's like pretty much 23 years of going to school. And personally, I think that's a very bad thing. Of course, like I said, that's a necessary thing in society. Going to school is kind of necessary now because you have to learn so much in order to compete with such a large talent pool. But again, I think that general phenomenon is just a bad thing. The fact that our whole society is based on innovation, that brings me to another example. Science and rational reasoning are central pillars of our society. I think rational reasoning is not a bad thing, of course. Logic is not bad. Logic is not a bad thing, but the thing is, when it's taken to the extreme, it can become a bad thing. So that's why I'm kind of thinking we have to be careful not to glorify something because the initial impetus for it was a good thing. Everything can be taken to a huge extreme. And in modern society, everything is taken to an extreme. That's part of the problem. There's no restraint, there's no limitation. Limitation is good for us. The earth is in balance because all organisms have limitations that they cannot cross except us. We have found our intelligence is a kind of, in a way, it was a survival mechanism, but it became over time a curse because it removes limitations that shouldn't be removed. And as a result, one of the effects of innovation, science, rational reasoning being taken to the extreme is that now we use these tools to provide immediate short-term fixes for problems that should have long-term solutions. But we don't really go after those long-term solutions because all of society is basically about the short term. The final example that I find very unnatural in society is money. And one example that constantly comes to my mind is investments. In many places like North America, you're expected to invest, in something. Maybe it's some kind of guaranteed investment certificate. Maybe it's mutual funds. Maybe it's some kind of retirement plan. Maybe it's something else. But basically, it's investment. I have to admit, I absolutely detest investment. I think the idea of investment is such an unnatural thing. I don't want to learn, it doesn't make any sense to work hard to accumulate large amounts of wealth and then to stick that wealth in some kind of complex mathematical system run by nanosecond trading computers. It's all broken to me. It's a system that definitely allows those who are good at it to excel in some sense, in a monetary sense. But for me, that system just feels unnatural. It feels extremely repellent. And I detest the fact that the default mode of living is to go to school for so long, way longer than you should, because those years of your youth, you should be using them to go out and do things that are just enriching to the soul. Only to get a job forwarding innovation, which I think is absolutely messed up. And then finally, using that money that you get from that excelling of innovation to invest it in some system, which doesn't really make sense. Money itself is not really, I think money itself is not a good thing. Now, of course, you need money to survive, so I wouldn't say don't go after it. You kind of have to get some of it if you want to eat today. But the whole concept of money is out of control because it allows people to extract way more resources than they would otherwise in a more primitive trade-based economy. Money is the very thing that allows a person to cut down a forest. It allows a person to cut down a huge forest because they can take all that wealth and resources and store it in a system that doesn't expire, which is money. So in short, where does this all lead? Modern industrial civilization, to me, is an offense. It's an offense to life. It's going in the wrong direction in every sense. I don't think there's a way to fix it. I don't think the band-aid solutions of solar panels and meager environmental protection laws are going to do anything. I don't think the society is fixable. Wildlife photography for me is, of course, part of civilization. I wouldn't say otherwise, but it's a part of civilization that I've found to express the way I think the world should be. And I think expression is a natural instinct, so I found that. And that's why I go out and I take pictures of birds, of flowers, of animals. That's why I want to go out into natural areas and be amongst the natural life, is just because I think the natural areas of the world are the good parts of this world. And I think those are the parts of the world that we should focus on rather than trying to build up an alternative world full of billion-dollar data centers and scientific research institutes and giant militaries fighting over resources. Doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever. I'm going to let you in on a little secret. A lot of the time, maybe even most of the time, especially when I need to interact a lot with civilization, I just feel absolutely exhausted with modern civilization. It's a thing that's absolutely exhausting to me. And that's one of the reasons why I cherish so much going out into nature, because it is my way of escaping this world. So that's it. That's one of the main reasons why I'm a wildlife photographer. That's one of the main reasons why after graduating and getting a job, I quit that job as fast as I could, because I absolutely could not bear to be in an environment whose main purpose is to further civilization. And that's the reason why I talk about animals and go out into nature. And I even have this YouTube channel, as paradoxical as it seems, because video itself, videos on the internet are one of the main components of industrial civilization. But I will tell you something. If I could live in a world where nature was protected, where I could live in nature and just be amongst nature, I wouldn't miss making videos. I would just stop making videos. I wouldn't miss doing it. And I would be totally happy to be completely disconnected. So I hope you enjoyed this video, a little bit more philosophical than some of them, but I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you again next time.